Hey everyone, welcome to the Huddle. It's about to be Veterans Day, which is a really important time of year. It's the time that we recognize so many men and women all over the country and all over the world, to be honest, who have served us and are serving us in some way to protect us and give us the very freedoms we have to do the things that we get to do and have conversations like this one I'm going to have today. So I want to introduce you to Mark Doyle. Mark is the founder of Rags of Honor Brands.
Yes, sir.
And Mark has a really interesting story that I've just been learning about the last few days. And it's always a privilege to get to have people like you here at Walmart, particularly at a time like this when we're just a few days away from recognizing our country's veterans. So Mark, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. And I would just say on the outset, the commitment that Walmart has made to Rags of Honor, but it goes on beyond that because you're helping veterans across the country, is unlike anybody else. So it is my honor to be here.
Oh, great. Thanks for coming. It means a lot to hear that. And we have people, the group that's here with us today know this. We have people all over the company that are shaping our future who had all sorts of careers, and many were first responders in the military. We regularly celebrate people who start their career here, then move on to something else, those that start their career somewhere else and they finish their career here. In a lot of cases, that's the United States military. Yeah. A lot of people are in and they do different things, whether it's cybersecurity or logistics and transportation, maintenance, you name it. The military teaches so many people how to do things really well. And so we're fortunate enough that they want to come work here. And we made pretty large commitments to the number of people that we not only want to hire, but that can be promoted once they're in the company. And I see it all the time. So yeah. Thanks for those words.
It's true. So, one of the questions I know we want to talk about is like, how did I get here? With my sort of life story, right? We grew up in a very poor family. Father died when I was 10. That's okay. The three older brothers were all Marines. And we didn't have very much, but I remember so many times on Saturdays we either went over to St. Jerome's, our church, to work with developmentally disabled, or on the other weekends we went to the local nursing home. And my mom didn't proselytize about it, but there was always somebody who had it worse than we did. There was always somebody who just needed our help. And so it was sort of imbued in all of us. And when the brother who's closest to me went to Vietnam, he did his second tour, come to find out later, like we just talked about, because we needed the $45 a month. When he came back, and even to this day, if it's been 50 years, you drop a fork in the corner, he still jumps.
Wow.
And he went through just a curious time when he came back, like a lot of these guys did. So I've always sort of had this sense that there's always somebody who needs help. There's certainly somebody who needs it more than I do. But I was fortunate enough in the 90s to be part of a team that went for the 50th commemoration of D-Day. And I got to meet some of the original guys who climbed Point du Hoc. Fast forward another 20 years, I end up in Afghanistan as part of an anti-corruption task force. And I'm on the ground there from 2010 to 2011. And our drive team members are all young Marines and soldiers, many of whom on their fourth and fifth deployment. So I returned to Chicago, and there are 2,000 homeless veterans just in Chicago. And then frankly, one day I said, we have to do something. Like, I have to do something. And so I had the idea to come up with an apparel company. I went to a local shelter. I called ahead because I'd read an article that they had like 400 living in this huge shelter. I said, I'm going to start an apparel company and a silkscreen company, and I'd like to go interview 4. I interviewed 4 on the spot.
Wow, that's great. And so seems pretty clear early in your life you were taught about a life of service from your mother, your brothers, and definitely your older brother. And what an amazing story that he would do that for the $45 that you needed to survive. And then you fast forward through years later, you just have this. And what year was it you started?
2012.
So 2012, you decided you have to do something, and you did it.
Yeah, and frankly, I really didn't think it through, like, how much money am I going to need? What I did was, the money I made in Afghanistan, I paid taxes on it, and I used all of it to this day. I've used it all to start this company, and we've hired over 100 since we started. And it was just, since I didn't serve, it was my way of doing what I could to serve those who did. And so we changed the lives of well over 100 since we opened our doors.
Right. And how did you do that? So talk about the lives that you've changed, talk about the mission and how this all works.
So the mission was like really simple. Be committed to every veteran as they were to us when they wore the uniform. And we built an apparel company, a silk screen company. We have an online presence. Then our first year, I think I was up to 10. And what I would do with the local VA is they would call from time to time and say, we've got 2 guys, 2 women. We lost our funding for this quarter. Is there any way you could take them on your payroll? The VA would call me. I always say, send them over. So we'd take anybody who needed a job, make sure they got a paycheck. If they didn't have an apartment, we'd help them get an apartment. And oftentimes they would go back to the VA because they'd get their funding again, but we would be a place where veterans would come, we'd teach them how to shoot the screens, we'd teach them how to work the presses. We have a great graphic artist. We've had several over the years, but our latest is a Navy kid who teaches anybody who wants to learn. And so the first thing we do is we hire them. And as you know from your years in business, one of the things that is one of the most profound things you can say to somebody, especially when they're think about being in a shelter, you've served your country, you fell on hard times, you don't even have a bank account maybe, you don't even know outside this place where your next meal is going to come, and somebody comes to you and says, you're hired. I've seen grown men literally cry. I've just never tired of that feeling that every one person you help just changes the trajectory of their life and other people in their life. So we got the introduction to Martin, one of the buyers, like 5 years ago. And he took a flyer. He took a 20-minute meeting with us. We're probably the smallest company you have in your whole repertoire. And Martin said, all right, so it was 20 minutes, ended up being like an hour and 20. He spent so much time with us. And we decided we're going to do 200 stores. And this is a story that I really wanted to tell because I want people to know the culture that you've built here. It's really important for people who watch this to know the culture that is here and the commitment that they made to us and to the veterans. He said, let's do 200 stores. And we were in 198 veteran canteen services. We know how to do UPC codes. We know how to do it. He said, let's start small, do 200 stores. We shipped 200 stores. Within days, phones ringing off the hook. Like the last check digit was off. T-shirts are ringing up at $395 a piece. It is haywire. And so we scramble, we break it down, we each call 50 stores. We get a hold of managers. I personally talked to some of the nicest women of all time who, like one I'll never forget, she goes, oh honey, you just send them down there, I'll take care of it. And she reskinned all of them for us. So it's a nightmare. And we get all, in a week later, all the UPCs are right. Martin says, let's do a call. I said, here it comes. So Martin says famously, well, that didn't go very well, did it? And I waited. He said, why don't we try it again? So his commitment to us was just amazing to think of all the things he had on his plate. He could easily have said, look, we gave it a shot. Good luck. But he didn't. What they have done to help us grow this from 200 stores to 1,000 stores to 1,700 stores, their commitment to us, to making sure we had good placement, to making sure we get the right price point, along with Corey and along with our friends at Melmark. It has been such a full-on effort to help us build this. It is incredible. And I will tell you that because of the work we did with the masks, where we sold like several million masks to you, it helped us feed our nonprofit. And our nonprofit during that period of time, we were helping veterans all across the city stay in their apartments, get groceries. So the impact that this group has had, that your group has had, is far more than I could even describe here, but it's hundreds and hundreds of people you've helped just by your commitment to us.
That's great. And one of the things that we talk about here a lot is operating with purpose. Our company has a clear purpose, and just listening to what you're talking about in the stories is you shifted or helped people shift from a point in their life when they had very clear purpose while they served to a point after where the purpose was unclear. And by offering them the chance to come work with a team, do something that's meaningful, you reinstill that inner purpose they have, which we know is strong.
Dead on. dead on. That is the thing that we have seen, in our nonprofit that we built later, because as we found out, of course, if you've been in a shelter and you don't have much money in the bank and we get you an apartment, you don't have money for a security deposit. You don't have a bed maybe.
Right.
So we layered that in above it all to help smooth that transition. But we had veterans who were struggling with suicidal thoughts. And one of the leading factors is their loss of sense of purpose and not thinking like they could fit in. So you were dead on, and we have, thankfully, we fund a procedure that helps to cure post-traumatic stress. Sure. But it's a through line. You see, even those who don't get to the point where they have ideations of suicide, they just don't feel like they fit in because they had such a specific mission while they were in the military.
Yeah, and so many people struggle with so many things, and I see it broadly the way I'm sure you do. You see it with veterans. I've also seen those people that were once an athlete, or they may have had their best time of their life while they were in college, or things happen where you look back and say those are the best days, best years, but what you really have to do is look from within to say, what am I going to be doing the next year, 5 years, 10 years to add value to those around me? When you find a team that brings you in, what a great way to start.
And we were lucky to do it, and we were happy to do it. And I see it. It almost doesn't matter, I shouldn't say that, who the buyer is, because the buyers have all been so committed to us. But it's because of the culture that you all have built here, and it means something. When we were able to help, I got a text today. I get them. People find me on the internet, and I'm just saying this to give you just an illustrative example of what our partnership has been able to help me do. There's a veteran right now who I've never met who's struggling in Pennsylvania. And he found me by Googling Rags of Honor. And he hoped I could help him. And so, long story, but we cashed out him enough money so he could stay in his apartment.
Good for you.
That's the stuff that we do. But that's the stuff that we do because we have a partnership with Walmart. And I know I've said it a few times, but it is important that people understand the commitment that companies like you have made to people like me who are just trying to build a business and just trying to do the next right thing. And so it takes everybody along the chain of commerce or it doesn't work.
Exactly. So a few things that we are committed to. Number of veterans we've been hiring over the last about 14 years since our first commitment. And fortunately, we've exceeded those goals and we've raised the goals again. I have countless stories of veterans who are here all over the company. In fact, they've been in this very room. A couple recently we promoted and offered roles to here in town. But talk about entrepreneurship just broadly. So for other entrepreneurs who are trying to get a start, what was it like? What advice do you have? I could guess a few of those things because you talked about a couple already, but what would you say to them?
So a couple of things I would say is the very first thing is to be authentic. It sounds rudimentary, but be authentic and know what your why is. Like, why are you doing this? Like, why? And if you don't believe it, people you're selling to aren't going to believe it. That's the first thing. And this is when I've seen military folks and been around military a lot. One of the things that makes a really good, whether it's somebody in the military or somebody who is a lawyer or somebody who's a plumber, do the little things just like you do the big things. Pay attention to the little things you do in your business because the big things will take care of themselves. But you want to build a culture that pays attention to everything. It's all important. And the last thing I will say, and this is good advice that for people dealing with Walmart for sure, but anybody, know your limitations, right? Know your limitations. Don't be afraid of them, but build a core competency. And that's what you do. Because my experience has been you can't be all things to all people. So don't try and be. Find that core competency, be authentic, do the little things. It's still going to be hard, but if you do those things, and not unlike in sports, where if you want to practice basketball, you shoot 1,000 free throws. You swing a club 1,000 times. Do the same thing every day, every single day. And eventually, you'll break through. We did. We didn't know anything about it.
And if those things are all in service of a clear purpose, then the organization can line around. It reminds me of the story of President Kennedy asking someone who worked in maintenance, at NASA, what's your role here? And he said, I'm part of the team that's going to help put a person on the moon, because every person in the organization is working to that. So if you have clear purpose and people understand it, they'll deliver. So last thing while I've got you, and thanks again for coming and spending time with us. Veterans Day, what's it mean to you personally, given your background and your family's involvement?
One thing, it may sound a little trite, but one of the things, it's sort of always Veterans Day for me just because of what we do. Mm-hmm. But as I said, the more I've talked to my brother lately, and as you've talked about people, the longer after they serve, they just start to tell you stories about what they did. The more thankful I am to the men and women who wear the uniform. Remember, today, less than 2% of the U.S. joins the military. So there's a very small percentage making an oversized commitment. And so for me, it reminds me of the commitment of 2% to make sure that all 330 million can live the life that we live. And as I say, I try and think about it every day, but on Veterans Day, it is really front and center for me.
Very good. Always important to take time, reflect, show respect, and thankful for your brother and so many others who did what he did and made a huge sacrifice for you and the family and put himself on the line at the ultimate level to make sure you're okay. So, Mark, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, man. This was
thanks
great.
for your service, and all the best to you in your future.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks, man.